Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Collins, and I am the Director of Strategic Solutions at United Benefit Advisors. UBA and Touchpoints, our guests today, want to welcome you to our first webinar in the 2023 Employee Benefit Webinar Series. Today's topic, employee benefits, current trends and their impact on communications, is brought to you by Chip Abernathy. Chip is the CEO of Touchpoints, and Touchpoints is a leading communication and technology company. And over the 18 years, I believe he said, Touchpoints has had the opportunity to serve over 1,000 companies around the globe, providing them with communication solutions that really change the way that their employees think about and use their benefits. Chip is a graduate of Texas A&M University and is a diehard Aggie sports fan. And he admits it can be painful at times. He's married with his 3 children and 1 son-in-law, 2 dogs, and 2 cats. He resides in Montgomery, Texas, where he is working on his black belt, and Krav Maga, and is passionate about leading his house church. So Chip, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to jump in and talk about current trends in employee communication and how those trends are impacting the world of employee benefits. Again, as Lisa mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and we'll either answer them as we go if they're urgent, or we'll wrap up at the end. We'll have a little time for Q&A. So let's get started today. We're going to start off by talking about this thing we call the communication gap. And then we're going to jump into trends that are impacting how you communicate to your employees. We're going to start off with readiness to communicate, the idea of developing your communication strategy, which tools to utilize, which channels you want to put in place, really how to target the audience and things you need to consider in regards to how you're going to communicate through the various channels you pick. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about what we call back to the basics, some things that you need to think about as you communicate. And then as a gift to you for attending today, we put together a communication checklist. It's a little 2-page document that we formatted for you to help you analyze where you are internally from a communication standpoint. And also if you wanted to reach out and touch your employees to see if they want to give you some feedback on how you're communicating, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. So with that, let's get started. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with this picture that's on the stage. I grew up in a small town in East Texas. So the first time I ever heard somebody say mind the gap, I lived overseas and I was standing at a train station. Had no idea what it meant when this guy yells at me, mind the gap. And so I went over and asked him, I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, look down. I looked down. He said, see that space between the yellow and white lines? You're at this train station. You go past that white line, you're on the train tracks. It could be dangerous, could be deadly. So you want to stay behind the yellow line. That communication to me at that point in time, I was with my, at the time, 2-year-old daughter, was very critical that I learn that and understand that as I'm transversing around this city. So mind the gap is really critical. Now, from our perspective in the communication world, what happens when there is a gap in communication or no communication? There are a lot of consequences that we face, whether it's personal, whether it's in business, whether it's employee to employer. If there's a gap in that communication, bad things can potentially happen. Think about how it's related to a personal relationship, right? If there's no communication or there's a gap, it can lead to misunderstanding. It can lead to challenges. It can cause confusion. It can even lead to fear of something happening that there's really no reason to be fearful of. In the business environment, if we don't have all of the information or there's been a gap in communication to our employees, it can decrease productivity. I don't have all the right information to move forward with a project, or have client deliverables and I don't know all the things I need to know to deliver to the client. It can lead to maybe even what's worse, poor decision making, right? I don't have all the facts to make a good decision. I don't have all the information that I need. It hasn't been communicated from management or other departments. And that can lead to missing opportunities and real problems within an organization. And then now, if you fast forward where we are in the world from a workforce perspective, we have employees that are working from home in this remote workforce or a hybrid workforce. When there's no communication or there's a gap, it can damage the employer-employee relationship. As employees feel lonely, they feel isolated. They're at home. They can't just pop into the office and say, "Hey, Lisa, what's going on? How's everything going today?" So communication is really critical. And I think it came to the forefront when COVID rolled out this time about 3 years ago. As it relates to employee benefits, the bottom line with communication is it's really important. If as an employee of yours, I can't find the information I need around my benefits when I need it, it never happens Wednesday afternoon while I'm in the office sitting outside the benefits department. It usually happens on Saturday night. One of my kids is sick. I need to get information about my benefits. If I can't find that information when I need it, I might make some bad decisions, right? Or if I don't understand how benefits work, because the last time I heard about them was in October or November during open enrollment meetings. Those missed opportunities to communicate to the employees can lead to some big challenges as it relates to benefits, misusing them. So for example, let's say we have a telehealth benefit, and part of my benefits, I get a discounted rate if I go to urgent care. And then I have a co-insurance or if I go to the ER. Well, if I don't know how those benefits work, and let's say I fall and cut my chin and I drive by urgent care to go to the ER, the cost could be 5 times as much for not only me, but increased claims to the company. If I miss an opportunity to go get preventive screenings or take advantage of a doctor's office visit, those things, or maybe, select the wrong prescription drug, those things can lead to catastrophic claims. So it's imperative that we communicate, educate our employees about the benefits. When we don't, statistics prove that there's a decrease in trust in the company, a decrease in trust in the organization, and there is a real miss on the value perception of the benefits that are offered. Statistics show that, let's say I work for a company that has an average benefit plan, but they do an amazing job communicating to it. I know all about the benefits. I know where to find information. I know where to go if I'm making a decision on healthcare or enrolling in benefits. It is 3 times higher. My value perception of my benefits will be 3 times higher than if I work for a company on the street that has just an amazing benefit program, a really high ranked benefit program, but they don't communicate effectively. So we know that impacts the value perception of the benefit programs that you put in place. And quite frankly, our clients tell us, we're spending, upwards of millions of dollars on the benefits that we offer. And it kind of hurts when our employees don't value those tools and resources we put in place for them and their families. All right, we're going to jump into the first component of this. And I like to think about this, in the relation to the last 3 years. This time 3 years ago, we started hearing rumblings of this COVID-19 or coronavirus pandemic. I remember very clearly about this time, maybe about a week from now, when the first case of COVID-19 arrived at an airport in San Antonio, Texas. And a lot of our clients and even us as an organization, were we ready to communicate? Did we know what was going to happen, or were we prepared for that event? And were we prepared to communicate not only to our clients, but to our employees? And so did we learn any lessons over the last few years? And are we ready in the event that something like this ever happens again? So the first piece of what we're going to talk about today is readiness to communicate. If you haven't noticed, from day to day, things change in this world, and they change at a rate that we have never seen before. So we have to be ready to be able to meet those changes and meet the challenges from a communication standpoint. So what we're going to do today as we go through these different components is give you hopefully some insight and some tools and resources and things to think about as you're preparing or committing to be ready to communicate to your employees. One of the first things that we want to really talk about is this idea of having a communication strategy or plan in place, not only for ongoing education around things like benefits and safety and other things that might impact your organization, but how are we going to communicate to our employees about those unplanned things that pop up? We're going to jump into the ability to select and pick the right technology platform that your company might use as a hub or an employee experience platform. Right now, I think it's 70% of companies around the country are looking to invest in these technologies to help them communicate to this remote or hybrid workforce for those companies that aren't putting in a return to office policy. We're going to also jump in and talk about the idea of moving from this single channel. Most companies we talk to, probably 90% plus, when you ask them how they communicate to their employees, the answer is typically email. or face-to-face meetings, but it's usually email. So we're going to talk about this idea of multi-channel or omni-channel approach to communication. There's a slight difference between the two. Multiple channel means I might be sending out emails, I might have an intranet, I might even send out text messages or use a channel like Slack. Omni-channel means those channels really work together to provide a clear message on what we're doing within our company. We're going to talk about the stakeholders and the importance of reaching the right stakeholders with the right messaging. And from your perspective in the benefits world, one of the areas that is probably communicated to the least, but has a bigger impact is the idea of communicating to dependents. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the idea of making this communication not an event, but a year-round process. So the bottom line, and we know this from years of experience and talking to people, is that the organizations that communicate well to their employees, they have increased engagement. We have clients you see that do a really good job communicating to employees. Maybe they've rolled out a wellness program, and within 2 or 3 years, they're up at 70+% participation in that wellness program, saving money in their benefits and allowing their employees to receive a discount on the premiums they pay, for example. So we see improved engagement. Those types of things lead to improved productivity and reduced absenteeism, which are big buzzwords in our industry, but really allow you to measure the results of those types of engagements within your organization. And at the end of the day, especially over the last 3 years, it's been a real challenge attracting the right talent and then keeping that talent. I think the statistic, which is a little bit scary right now, is I think it's 70 to 80% of employees have quietly quit their organizations if they're working remote. So there's some challenges that we're faced with. The other challenge with this readiness to communicate is the idea that we just can't pop into an office or we can't walk around the corner to get someone's ear to ask questions. So we have to be ready, and we need to put these things in place to be successful. Now, looking at this picture, 3 years ago, if I asked you this, it was probably, yeah, all the time. How many of you have been in a meeting with peers at your organization where you've been planning maybe a budget, you've been planning safety, you might have been planning which benefits you're going to offer to your employees with your UBA broker, where you're going and you're sitting down and you're determining what you're going to offer. But how many of you have been in a meeting that's looked like this, where you sit down and discuss how you're going to communicate to your employees, not only benefits, but in general? So this is one of those things that we really want to jump into first, is this idea of developing your communication strategy. Some of the things that we want you to consider as you're going through this, idea of developing a communication strategy is really understanding your goals. When you have a clear understanding, for example, let's say we're going to roll out a high deductible healthcare plan and an HSA, or we really want to move people or shift employees into that benefit plan. How are we going to do that? How are we going to communicate that? Those are the kind of things that you want to have laid out up front. What are the goals with our benefits, or what are the goals with whatever it is we're trying to communicate? Then once you have that done, you're going to need to sit down and map out your calendar. What content am I going to send out? When am I going to send it out? Date and timelines, etc. And which channels am I going to use to distribute that? The other pieces of this is either you're going to have somebody internally that develops content for you, creates that content, or you're going to outsource it. So what do those dates and timelines look like from that perspective? I mentioned on here using what we call an employee experience platform. That's kind of a buzzword in the industry right now. What it really is talking about is this idea of this intranet, where an employee can go in and find information on the organization from, it may be benefits, it may be payroll information, it may be tools and resources that are non-related to benefits that they can click a link and get to box.com or something like that. But it's an idea where an employee can come into this technology space and find information that they need. So those are things that are critical to think about. Understanding which channels you're going to communicate to your workforce. So for example, let's say I own a manufacturing company, I had 100 employees, and I wanted to send something out. Email probably isn't the best way to get it out, because a lot of those folks in the manufacturing space may not have company email or may not have access to it during the day. So how am I going to get that message out to them? So I may have a white collar workforce that sits in an office at a computer all day. Is putting something in the break room on the wall maybe the best way to communicate? Probably not. There are other ways to do it. So understanding the channels that work best for you and what it is that you're going to, use to get that message out to your employees. And then again, considering which stakeholders that you want to communicate to, including dependents where applicable. The idea behind this, if you think about this, developing a strategy, there are several challenges we've seen over the years that companies are faced with when it comes to communicating internally. And it, again, doesn't have to be just about benefits. And I call it the start-stop syndrome. And it's, hey, we're going to start this communication strategy today. We're going to pass out this content. We're going to distribute it via email or hand it out or create flyers or whatever. And 2 or 3 months into that program, another fire pops up or a distraction pops up, and that communication gets put on the back burner. The strategy, putting it in place, mapping the calendar out, and understanding using maybe distribution channels that automate that process for you are ways that you can avoid that. It's also having an effective strategy in place is going to keep the benefits that you offer in front of mind for your employees. Some of the key things when it comes to just developing a benefit communication strategy that you want to think about are the different events that happen throughout the year. It doesn't have to be super complicated. We just went through for a vast majority of our clients open enrollment in October, November timeframe in the ballpark with effective date of 1/1. We realized that there are a lot of other businesses that do offer renewals, but those clients that just went through open enrollment, there were a lot of changes this year after a couple of years with COVID and everything where there weren't changes. So the first month or two of this year, they're looking at communicating about new benefits, new carriers, new tools and resources. Mental health over the last 3 years, that issue has skyrocketed to typically the #1 claims cost most companies are faced with. 3 or 4 years ago, I guess 4 years ago, 1 out of every 10 employees said it was a challenge, anxiety or stress. Now it's 4 or 5 out of 10. So it's a big issue. When am I going to communicate about that? I'm going to mix that in my strategy throughout the year. Same thing with other tools and resources that are important to my organization. It might be telehealth. It might be mail order prescription drugs because we have people that take prescriptions and they take them throughout the year. So whatever it is, map those things in there. Then when it comes time to, as you move through the year and you've added and sprinkled in things that you want to communicate around, whether it's benefit or wellness or what have you, then how can I, maybe during open enrollment season, before open enrollment, maybe I want to get more people enrolled in a specific benefit. So we have, we've seen clients, last year we had a client that rolled out voluntary life insurance the year before. I think out of 900 employees, they had 125 ballpark sign up. We put together this communication strategy for them to really help them focus on that prior to open enrollment. And they added another 250 people to the enrollment in that voluntary life. So use the common occurring events throughout the year to help build out your strategy, to help deliver information, whether it's notifications during open enrollment or notifications that a wellness requirement is coming up, like getting your physical or blood work done or what have you. Use those events in your benefit plans to help build out that strategy and then put them on the calendar so that they are delivered when they need to be. Okay. So the strategy is really where everything starts from a communication standpoint. The next piece of it we talked about in the, in a couple points here before is utilizing some kind of technology platform that's going to allow you to deliver information that's not only relevant to employees, to your organization, but also timely, up-to-date information. It's a place where I can store information. Now, the statistics I've read and seen where it says that 72% of employers are looking for technology from a perspective of delivering it to employees, to have a place for employees to get information. One of the key things and one of the big buzzwords that you'll hear when you research this is this idea of having a mobile first technology platform. And that simply means that if you look at, sorry, I'm trying to find my phone. If you look at the cell phone or the smartphone, probably 90% of people in the United States of America have one. A lot of times this is their only computer. This is where they want to receive the information. If I told you that the average person picks up their phone 70 times a day, I'd be lying to you. It's actually 96 times a day. Smartphones have taken over how we communicate, how we receive information in most cases. So as you're evaluating technology to deliver communication, whether it's a intranet or this idea of this employee experience hub, look at it from a mobile first perspective. What experience does that deliver to your employees? Same thing for communication channels. Are there apps we need to download? Can we use existing things that we already have? So that mobile first is a big thing. When we go and we talk to clients about communication tools and resources they use, one of the first things they bring up is, hey, we have an intranet, and that's great. One of the things that you need to think about from the intranet's perspective and how you're using that is often to get to the intranet, you have to have either VPN access, or a lot of intranets now are web-based, so I can access them away from the office. But if they do have VPN, who has access to that VPN, and how much information are you going to put there? And can I access it as an employee from home? The intranet idea has to be part of that strategy, right? But it can't be the only solution. Sometimes you may have to have an access point where dependents can access that benefits information when they need it from home as well. When you're building out this idea of this technology platform for your employees, make sure that it enhances your employee experience, doesn't add to the frustration. What we know from the employee perspective is that we have a lot of different tools and resources we have to access when we work for a company. Just on the benefit side, Ben admin platform, we have to access payroll. It may be an HRS system that does all of that, or one platform that does all of that. We may have wellness. We may have, say we have 12 or 15 benefits. That means we probably have, maybe 10 to 12 different carriers that we may need to go access their website to interact with our benefits. On the healthcare side, I need to find an in-network provider. I have to go to their website. If I want to get an EOB or find out, how much I've met of my deductible, I need to log into that site and go in and find that information. I may want to check my investments in my 401k. Or maybe my company offers me a really cool financial wellness tool that I can log into and check things, but that's just one more place to go. So make sure that this idea of this technology platform incorporates at worst the ability to link to other outside platforms, and it has all the other stuff on there, contact information, things I need for, to interact with my benefits. And then from your perspective as the employer, you want to make sure that this platform is easy on the admin side of things, whether it's pushing out communication. Can I go in and schedule this communication? Can I add to it whenever I want to? Events happen. How do I make updates? Or is there someone that can make update on the team? Often we hear when a company has an intranet that's managed by the IT department, it could take 2 to 3 weeks to update information. Well, in the benefits world, sometimes that's not quick enough. So make sure you have access to those tools and resources that you can do those updates. And whether it's updating something on those pages or pushing out communication, you want to be able to access that. And then maybe even more importantly is it's easy for the employee. I'm consuming information. It's easy to find stuff. It's readable. We'll often go through and look at, as you're evaluating, say, for example, your intranet, how do we post information on there? And we'll find an intranet that has a link to a lot of documents. Well, I don't know if you've ever tried to find a copay or a prescription copay amount on an SBC or a benefit summary that might be 3, 4, 5, 6 pages long. And God forbid you had to look at an SPD. But it's hard on your phone. You got to open up a PDF. You got to find the right page, kind of guess, pinch zoom in on it, all that stuff. Make sure this technology platform, mobile first, easy for the employees to access, and things are readable on their phones so they can find the information they need when it's time. The other piece of it is, if you look at some of the benefit trends this year, as I was researching for this presentation, the benefits that are impacting employees right now, are things around mental health, for example. Well, what a great place to take information on that and post it on an intranet or a portal or your mobile app or whatever it is that you deliver to your employees, and put it front and center. But not just the fact that you have, for example, an EAP. I think it's 93% of companies offer an EAP, something in that ballpark, but utilization is typically 10% or less. And there's multiple reasons for that. Some people say, it's the stigma dealing with mental health issues. That's part of it. Make sure you communicate the privacy aspect of it, that there's this curtain between the EAP and the company. Make sure you let them know they don't have to call HR to engage with that. But most importantly, explain to the employee how I interact with that tool or resource. Do I make a phone call? Is it in person, or do I have the option for in person? Do I go on a website? If I go to the website, is there a login code? What's the process to do that? Make sure those things are communicated to the employees, whether it's mental health or some tool or wellness program or whatever you have. This is a great place to put that information. And then think about the other channels that you're using to help communicate announcements, pin stuff to the top of like a Slack message board or a Teams message board so people can find it, but make it really easy. Technology, the nice thing about it is it allows us to very not only time-wise effective, but also cost effectively deliver information to our employees and their dependents when necessary, to keep them up to date with what's going on in the benefits world. All righty. We're going to jump in now. We're going to talk about the channels. There are so many different ways you can push out communication now. And so determining which channel is best for you and your organization, it might take a little bit of time. When I call into an account, we start talking about their communication, where they're at. One of the things that we really have found, I think it's around 90% probably, if I could go back over the last few years, most people have email, and that's their one source of communication. It's important. It's not necessarily optimal from a communication standpoint because the average employee or person gets about 100 emails a day, and that includes everything, work, spam, what have you. Some companies have spam filters, so it may be down a little bit. But at the end of the day, if I'm trying to get important information about a benefit where I want somebody to really learn it, email may not be the most optimal. It may be that I posted on the intranet, as we've already talked about. Some of the channels that people are starting to use, text messaging. It's a great way to get announcements out. You know, we've seen companies that have wellness programs communicate deadlines, announcements that have had really big impacts on their utilization or engagement in that wellness program. We've seen clients that during COVID, they were communicating a shift, where to go find information. They had an on-site clinic, and they had all the latest for that school district in this case, all the latest resources on COVID, where to go to get tested. If you wanted to engage with a doctor, what did you have to do before you showed up? So text messaging is a great way to get out messaging. A lot of companies with COVID and people working from home have developed their Teams platform through Microsoft, or Slack, which I think now is owned by Salesforce, which are these instant messaging platforms. Our company, we're a Zoho platform company. We use their Click platform. It's the same thing. It's a great way to collaborate between employees, to feel like you're in touch with people. You don't have to send email and muddy your email box. You can go in and communicate through that. It's a great way to put educational information out. They usually will host some kind of videos if you want to put videos on there. I send my employees usually a video a week, whether it's an announcement about a team meeting or something fun that happened or what have you. But it's a way to get communication out to employees if you have those channels. And there's some other things you can do. Video conferencing. I mean, how fun would it have been to be a shareholder in Zoom in December of 2019 and know that in 6 months your investment was going to go up 10 times? That would have been great. Use that tool, great for all hand meetings, group meetings, etc. Use it sparingly. Zoom fatigue is a real thing, right? So you have to be careful on how you're using things. Video is a great way to get messaging out, especially important messaging from leadership. A CEO that takes the time to record a video on their iPhone and publish it to one of the channels, that has real impact. There's transparency, authenticity there. It's a great way to do training. A lot of our clients will go in and they'll record their open enrollment meetings and embed them into some platform, either YouTube or Vimeo, and then post it on their intranet or their portal to go in and get that information on there. So video can be a great way to communicate to employees as well. And then there's always print. Now, print is maybe one of the more costly items. It's a little bit delayed because you have to go through the design process, the print process, the distribution process, etc. So you really have to kind of figure out what it is that you want to use. And these are just a few of the channels out there. Not every channel is great for each type of message. If I'm educating people, it's hard to educate somebody in 160 characters on a text, but I can direct them through text to another place to go get information. Or maybe I have a video platform that gives me a short link that I can text out. So just be cognizant of the channels that you're going to use, how that message will be delivered, and really the ease of use of that employee. And selecting the right channel can be critical and can make amazing differences in how you communicate to your employees. All right, this next photo It's interesting. I was looking through Shutterstock for photos of this over the last few weeks, and I looked up the word caregiver. And you look it up, and statistics show that 80% of the caregivers, when children are sick, it falls on mom's lap. You know, I know in my family, I take my kids to the doctor, but when the kids are sick, they don't call me, they call mom. Mom's name gets yelled a lot. And as we look at the audience that we're communicating to, whether it's benefits related or not, understanding who the stakeholders are and what's in it for them can help drive a successful communication strategy. Now, some key things that you want to make sure if you're looking at or endeavoring in the way of a communication strategy is understanding the information that you need to make sure you have access to. If you're getting ready to roll out, for example, text messaging, but you don't have a way to collect cell phones, that's the first thing you need to start with. How are we going to collect the cell phone number of the employees and maybe their dependents? What is our system of record? How often are we getting employees to update it? So make sure you have the way or a way to gather and keep current information on your employees. When we talk to most companies, the system of record is either going to be payroll, the Ben admin platform, or maybe one of those that combines both, an HRS system, what have you. But make sure you ask your employees to keep that information current. You can go in and set the fields in those types of platforms to be that information must be entered in before they can proceed. So that's a critical component of it, to have access points. So if you're texting, you need cell phones, you need their name. If you're emailing, obviously you need email. If you're using the Slack or Teams, a lot of times you can target individual by having their name in there because they've been loaded in there via their email. Where possible, when you're communicating, target that communication, right? So or personalize that communication. You know, I get a text message with my name in it, I'm at least paying attention a little bit. Hey, I want to know how they got my name, who it is, what's the communication about. But when you've communicated to your employees that this stuff's coming out about benefits or what have you, and then it has their name in it plus the company name, it's just going to lead to a lot more engagement in that process. In fact, text messages, you know, in that case, especially when you personalize them, about 93% of text messages are opened within 3 minutes, according to the carrier. So personalizing it is going to get you a great open rate. When you're sending out messaging and you have data points you can use that to target communication. You see clients that go out and they send something maybe to every employee, which is great in general when you're educating employees about how benefits work and the benefit plans from an awareness standpoint. But let's say during open enrollment, you have 100 employees and 30 of them have enrolled in the first week, which is about average. There's always a big chunk of them that don't the first week, they wait. You send out a text message that second week of enrollment on Monday, hey, don't forget you've enrolled, but you took the time to go in that platform, create a census file for those 70 employees who haven't enrolled and send out messaging to that group. You're targeted to them. They know they haven't enrolled, and now you can then measure to see how much impact that communication's had on them. That's just one small example, but look at data points to target messaging and also to help craft your strategy. I mentioned including dependents. Non-employee benefit selection, 60% of the benefits that your employees select, typically on average, the selection process is made with a dependent telling somebody, hey, these are the benefits that we need to enroll in. This is the mix of investments we need to make in our 401k. This is the healthcare plan we need to enroll in. This is going to match up to our family better. And then 80% of healthcare utilization is determined by mom, who the doctors are, when we're going to go in. So then therefore it's what is the copay, what is the visit schedule, all those different things. So keep that in mind when you're communicating, and remembering that that's an audience that you need to try to figure out how to get in front of as it relates to controlling and managing how your benefits are used out there. One other thing to consider adding, and I put employee handbook in here, but it could be your confirmation statement on your Ben admin. It could be a part of your onboarding process in payroll or your HRS system, but consider adding a consent to communication clause. And what that simply is if I'm getting ready to roll out communication to employees, and let's say I want to use text messaging or email, and I don't provide my employees a cell phone, it just gives me a little bit of a safety check to say, hey, we've told you we're going to communicate about you. Part of your compensation is to cover that. but we're going to send out communication, these channels, and you are giving us consent to reach out to you via phone, email, text, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever channels you have in there. Add that into the employee handbook as part of their onboarding process. And that just covers all your bases, however you need to communicate. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is getting the message to the right people at the right time is going to dictate the success of your program. And you'll see changes in behavior, changes in utilization, changes in engagement, et cetera. Okay. Now, as Lisa mentioned, I'm a big Texas A&M football fan, season ticket holder, and last year was not a very good year because I believe we kind of got away from some of the fundamental practices you need to have on the football field. Well, fundamentals apply to just about everything we do in life, especially around employee communication. So here are some things to think about as you're getting ready to endeavor into this world. There are some key things. Now, the first one that I want to talk about is this idea of rule of 7. And we've heard it regardless if you're in sales or you're parenting or whatever it is. People have to hear stuff multiple times before they get it. And the rule of 7 just states that before somebody will interact with a product or service, they have to see or hear about it 7 times before they'll say yes. In sales, it used to be, hey, you have to get to 7 no's before you hear your first yes, that kind of stuff. But the idea behind it is we have to repeat the message. If we're doing communication during open enrollment and maybe here and there on an ad hoc basis as we feel like we need it, we're missing the mark on our communication strategy. When you're communicating, especially around benefits, but really in general, if they're, in the benefits world, there's a lot of industry jargon that's utilized. There are a lot of acronyms. If you're going to use acronyms, spell them out and then put the acronym after it so employees know what you're talking about. They may not understand what an HSA means, et cetera. That all impacts this next piece, which is a readability score. And no matter if you move into the world of putting out employee communications or you're just trying to communicate better via your own emails, there's a little thing you can use in Microsoft Word that gives you this readability score. It's called the Flash grade level score. And if you go in Microsoft Word and you put content in there, you can highlight that content, do a spell check, and then it'll give you a little area you can click on the right-hand side that will give you the statistics of that document or that paragraph or what have you. And in there is that readability score. The goal in everything you write in a business setting should be 7th to 8th grade. Just last week, I had a client. He's been a longtime client of mine. He left the firm he was with, went to a new firm, sent me an email. Hey, this is going out to a client's employees next week. Can you take a look at it? I opened it up as a Microsoft Word document, open enrollment memo that was written at the 15th grade level. So you had to be a junior in college to understand, or at least have that type of education, understand what that memo was going to be talking about. Now, the problem was this wasn't a college. This was just a general organization that had people out in a warehouse, people in manufacturing, people in the office. Either way, benefits is a complex topic. Use that type of tool to help write 7th, 8th grade level. You do that by shortening words, 2 syllables or less, shortening your sentence, removing fluffy words, taking out jargon, those types of stuff. And you can retest it and you can see how the comprehension of what you're trying to write improves as you get lower in the grade level. As a side note, all the great authors in time write 7th grade or below. Newspapers are written that way. Not that we read newspapers much anymore. Hemingway wrote, I believe, at the 4th grade level. So it's a real thing, and it can really change the way you communicate. Again, remember, ongoing communication throughout the year. It needs to be relevant for your organization and to the employees and their families. Manage your employee data. Critical component if you're going to start a communication platform. And then I have on here measure the results. Use data to measure the results. Use data to measure the results and help craft future communication programs. Data I'm talking about is, it's things that it's not always easy to get data on claims issues and things like that, but utilization in programs, right? If I'm going to roll out a wellness or well-being program, how many people are participating in it? Have I communicated about it? How has that changed? I want people to enroll in this type of plan. What did that look like after enrollment? It may be that, I just really want people to go to our intranet. Can I measure those statistics and what does it mean? And then how do I communicate based off of that? And then to give you a little bit of insight on how we selected our company name, make sure you use multiple touch points to ensure the message reaches your audience. It's going to be critical for the success of your program. If you're using one channel, oftentimes the message is missed. And so you're going to miss an opportunity to get in front of an employee to communicate to them. And the bottom line as it relates to communication, the fundamentals of that is just remember, keep it simple. From everything from the text that you're sending out at 160 characters to building your intranet, make it easy to find things on there from a benefits perspective, managing the data up front so you have it ready to go. Just keep it simple. It'll help you move along in the communication world. All right, now, as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we've put together a couple of tools for you to use to evaluate where you are and to help you stay on target in the communication quest here. And if you take your phone out, most people have seen QR codes, but I put a little QR code up here. So you just open up your camera, and then you're going to hold your camera right there in front of the screen. You can't see my phone, but it's right here. And you click on that, and it should take you to our communication checklist. It's loaded in our box folder, so you should be able to email that link or that document to yourself and download it. On the front is a communication checklist, which is designed for you to go through and figure out where you are. What's your readiness to communicate? Do you have the right technology in place? What channels do you have? Now, this isn't designed to be mass mailed out to people and all that. It's designed to make it real simple for you to customize it for yourself. It's in a PowerPoint. You can take the content out of it. You can load it into tools that you might use to survey people. On the back of this document is an employee-facing survey to ask them about how they feel you're doing communicating as an organization from different levels of management, which tools and resources they like to use, et cetera. So feel free to use this to kind of capture where you are in the world of communication and find areas that you might be able to improve upon. And the same thing from your employees. And again, if you guys have questions, happy to stick around and answer questions. But from a presentation standpoint, that concludes everything. And so, Lisa, we'll let you know if there are questions, and then we'll answer those.
If anybody has any additional questions, there's a couple here. Feel free to put it in the question box, and we still have a couple minutes to answer those questions. One of the questions is you had talked about texting, and they were asking, is there like a sign off or an opt-in because maybe data charges, things like that? Do the employees have to sign off or opt in for that?
So there are a couple of different ways that you can use texting platforms. So there are two different types of texting platforms. So if I walk into a retail establishment and there's a sign on there that says text, like for example, my dry cleaner, text Tide to Tide Dry Cleaner, this number, and then I'll start getting coupons and stuff through my texting. That's called an opt-in, right? It's a short code. It might be text 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the word Tide, and then I start getting information because I'm opted in. There are other methods called long code, which don't require an opt-in. You just have to give employees the ability to opt out. Often when it's an employee to employer communication, that you're not selling something, you're educating them. You might be texting them 2 or 3 times a year. You've got that consent to communicate built into your employee guide. You can use that long code form. It's usually a little bit less expensive from an entry point standpoint as well. But they have platforms out there that you can access that do the opt-in or the opt-out version. But those are the requirements. If you're selling something, marketing something, you can't just start randomly sending text messages to people. You need to use that opt-in. If you're educating employees or sending information out to employees that impact, their job, et cetera, you can use that opt-out methodology.
Okay, we have another question, but before I read it and you can answer it, can you scroll back to the QR code? Somebody's needing that QR code again.
I certainly can.
Maybe just stay on that while we go through.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, great. So another question came in is talking about the multiple channels. My company, they're saying, uses multiple channels. Some is in Teams, some's on the intranet, some of the documents, they're just using multiple channels for communication, but it's stored and they can't find it. The employees are struggling. So just kind of best practices around that.
So the best practices are going to be, if you think about from an organizational standpoint, let's just focus on benefits here. You're communicating through Teams, you're pushing out information, and then you send them to an intranet to find content, documents, what have you. You need to make sure that benefits information isn't 7, 10, 15 clicks deep on your intranet. I've seen it. A good friend of mine, client of ours for a long time before they sold, went in and looked at their intranet. He's a VP of HR of an organization of 12,000 employees. Could not find their benefits information on the intranet, had to call IT in to show them where it was. And the idea is that if it's important to your employees, they need to be able to find it within a click or two. So use that best practice to go in and instead of having HR, then benefits, then so on and so forth, before I can click in and get to a lot of documents or what have you, make it easy to find, make it a homepage item if it's critical to your employees, right? You might access or supplement the intranet with an outside landing page where you can go in and click to for more detailed information about your benefits, or you may use a benefit specific app out there. So you can go in and link to those things and communicate. Another couple key things. One is you want to tell your employees where to find the information over and over and over. If you have access to a link directly to things like your benefits, et cetera, that you need, as an HR or benefits person within an organization, whether you're VP or CFO or what have you, put that link in your in your signature. If you have questions about your benefits, visit whatever that link is. Those are all things that are important. When you're doing enrollment meetings and you have a portal or a mobile app or an intranet, and that's where you want people to go to find benefits, what a better time when you're doing a benefit presentation to have that up on the screen and show your employees how it works. Onboarding new employees, go over that benefits portal or the intranet or where to find information about benefits online while you have their attention when they're new. And then reiterate it when they come into your office or call in or email in, hey, have you checked? And there's the link to this page on the intranet. So those are some things that I would say from a best practice standpoint, help companies communicate and get people to the information that they need to know.
Great. And the last question is, unfortunately, we make very last minute decisions with benefits. So I guess they're talking renewal time. So
Yep.
How do you put a good communication strategy in place with those last minute decisions?
So there are a couple things that's not unique. That is pretty standard in the benefits world. The key thing is, especially if there are changes and you're making last minute decisions, you need to have the ability to have a channel where you can push out communication really quickly. It may be email is your best chance. Hey, there's something new on the intranet, and you go in and you add that to the homepage of the intranet or the benefits portal, or you make it a link on the mobile app. You can still communicate. It may just not be quite as thorough as you would like. Then you also have the ability, post enrollment to communicate about some of the changes as well. So those are some things that you consider. The other piece of it is when you're doing your communication strategy, we try to map things out a year at a time, and we know things are going to change. We leave blank spots in there for the few weeks before open enrollment to cover some of that communication. But just know that you're not alone in that, as much as you can, you have to push the carriers to try to get those decisions and information ready for you. It doesn't always happen. So you have to do the best you can do. And quite frankly, just like everything else, a little bit can go a long way. So don't be afraid to communicate last minute. People still have typically 2 weeks to enroll. And we have clients sometimes where their decisions come in really late, and they'll give employees, an extended enrollment period as well.
We really want to thank you, Chip, for all your insight and expertise in communication. It is or can be very challenging. And with a company like yours, we value the partnership that we've had with you, working with our consultants and their clients. If you can scroll, please, the very last, I just want to announce our next webinar. So thank you everybody for joining. And I know everybody's busy, taking time out of your busy day. The next webinar will be March 21st, and we will be discussing 3 innovative ways to use self-funding. So even if you're a small group, this may be a good topic to explore, self-funding to reduce your medical costs. The last question I have, and maybe if we can hear from marketing, is can we get this slide deck sent to us? Where can we find it? Where is there a recording and so forth?